Hello and welcome to Random Offense. I'm Ethan Strauss. We will be joined by Nancy Rommelman, co-host of the Smoke 'em If You Got 'em podcast, plus so many things. Superstar two-way guest. If you're coming here from two-way, you've probably seen her on the Halpern Show, giving fantastic takes, which she will today. Now, before all that, I got to set up the most important topic royally in our nation, and that is male NFL cheerleaders. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a joke. I'm kidding just a bit, but these things can be important in a weird way. Our most inane controversies can have import. I'll give you an example, okay? Remember the Bud Light boycott. The Bud Light boycott that was triggered, if you will, by trans activists. Is it Dylan Mulvaney? I don't know, but it became a thing when it started, when there was conservative backlash to such a person being an endorser for Bud Light. I think every high status person said, this is stupid, this is silly, it doesn't matter, it's ridiculous. And lo and behold, it actually hurt the sales of Bud Light.
A lot.
And that had all these cascading effects. You saw something similar. There was a conservative backlash to Target and their Pride Month sales. It resulted in a complete restructuring of much of corporate America and its cultural transmission to the masses. Suddenly, after almost wholly worrying about the tastes and concerns of college-educated progressives, any major corporation with a large conservative base, they worried about their concerns, their tastes. That totally has reshaped things the last few years. So, right now, there's some sort of weird controversy out there. The Minnesota Vikings have announced that they have two male cheerleaders, and there has been some backlash to it online. I regard the topic as somewhat silly, and yet I ask, can the NFL be Bud Lighted, however you want to put it, over something such as this? And also, within all of that, what are the issues? Why would people be offended? What's the deal? Let's bring Nancy on. I want to talk about this with Nancy. If you want to register via Zoom, we can talk about this with you as well if you wish to submit questions. But Nancy, how are you? How you doing?
I'm well. I'm good. I read your piece about this, and I read my better half, Sarah Heppela's sort of response to this, like, well, gee, if anybody was paying attention, as she has been paying attention because she wrote about the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders and did a whole podcast in it. She's like, there have been male cheerleaders for quite a while. It started, back in the turn of the last century with male Yale leaders for Yale or whatever. And I think we all grew up seeing, if we watched cheerleading at all, they were always dudes. They were the guys that were, flipping the girls and doing these, crazy feats of strength. Now we have some guys that I think, as you put, they're a little swishier. They're out there like, hello, we're here.
Well, actually, before we get to your takes on that, I started to pause you, but you bring it up. I mean, can we play the video? We have that capability. Trace, can you grace us with these Minnesota Viking cheerleaders, perhaps? There we go. That's the only move I have. Okay. So that is Blaze on the left, as I see it on the screen, with an I in the name somehow. And I've seen Blaze the most as people are expressing shock, revulsion, or defense of this here phenomenon, which, I mean, there are 11 teams with male cheerleaders I should have added. But anyway, Nancy, I rudely interrupted you. You were saying.
Yeah. I mean, let's look at this particularly. Well, first of all, let's go back to Dylan Mulvaney for a second, since you heated up with this. That commercial, I saw that commercial because I was watching the Super Bowl, as one does. And I thought, wow, this is who does this appeal to? It's not going to appeal to your typical football person. It's not going to appeal to, I think it appealed to girls that are that actually are of the age to play with Barbies. Like that kind of like, so and like most women don't do anything like what Dylan Mulvaney was doing. It was like just kind of stupid. And it was a stupid, I think it was a poor, I understand why they did it. They were
Mm.
trying to, whatever, appeal to some weird part of the zeitgeist that maybe we should be appealing to. Okay, it backfired. Let's fast forward to Blaze. You know,
Good
Blaze
boy.
is Blaze is goofy. Blaze is kind of cute, but like, who is Blaze really appealing to? Other girls, like other girls that like this kind of kicky stuff. Is it appealing to the average football viewer? No, but also, like, does it really matter? Like, who really care? Like, do you really think this is not an issue? This is a non-issue that is a current we're going to own the libs moment. It's another we're going
Mm.
to own the libs tidbit. But it's also just a non-issue. And then I'll stop in a second. But I think one reason is because these guys are clearly gay. Okay, they're gay. Fine, whatever. And I mean, there are very few Americans that are really upset about that. Like, most
Mm.
people are like, so what?
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I interrupted.
no, no, no.
Everything you're saying makes sense. I was just thinking about this. I should probably show my work to a degree. There are some conservative influencers who expressed revulsion or dislike, but it's all confounded by how a lot of the big accounts right now on X, this is a whole other side issue. There's payment for engagement. There are accounts that are run by people outside the United States purporting to be right-wing influencers. There are some people on the right who don't like this, but I don't think it's at the level of a Bud Light. I don't think it's at that
No,
level of
no.
importance. But there is something funny about this. There are layers to this. I think from my perspective, some of what's happening is that this has declined in importance to people. Dance teams, cheer squads. The Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders are the highest status version that Sarah Hepola has covered, but this has all become noise. And to be blunt and frank about it, I think it's become noise because America has gotten more pornified. The world has gotten more pornified. So it used to be in the 1970s, there were these cheerleaders, and that was just a ooga. That was just insane for people to see in their living rooms or when they were at the game. But now they have access to so much stuff
Yeah.
that this sort of, I don't want to call it soft sex work, Nancy, because I know
Sarah got
people,
very upset with that when you said that.
yeah, because people get very defensive and say this is athletics and they take it seriously and everything else. But it was that to a degree. I think sexy nursemaids is something that Sarah said in the selling of this. But then that became less of a thing that men paid attention to. But it was sort of this residue of what we had. And now this has actually been happening for years until this controversy has popped up. And I think it happened for years under the radar because nobody's paying attention. The horniest football fan at the game is looking at their phone, placing a bet, or doing something else. Maybe looking at porn on their phone, frankly. They're not looking at the end zone or the sideline and going, oh my God, there's a man there. That's not what's happening.
Well, I mean, remember the great canceled too soon HBO series Winning Time about the
Oh,
Lakers and how the Lakers girls just like boom, like
yeah.
they got out there and all of a sudden the basketball, which was already great, was like, oh, and we get this at halftime. But you're right, we've been seeing this now for 4 or 5 decades, and it's like there it is. It's just like another thing to have. And I mean, they're not even like we talk a little bit. I used to go to a lot of Trailblazers games, and they've got the Blazer girls, but mostly they're doing different things. They're like
Mm.
shooting t-shirts or they're having kids trying to shoot a basket. It's just sort of window dressing. And again, I just think it's another little tidbit for people to fight over. We've had for the past 3 weeks a lot of these things like, look what they tried to take from us. And it's like
Mhm.
50 sorority girls and they all look exactly the same and they're all doing like backflips. And I'm like, yeah, actually nobody took that from you. And also they all look the same. And is this interesting? Like this is like what we're going to fight for. It's okay, but it's not important.
I mean, right now it seems like sorority videos are what's big on social media. So if it was taken, it has been returned.
Yes,
Not that I would know anything about that.
it's
That
been
that's not
returned.
something that's not something I know. I mean, I like this topic for a variety of reasons. I think it's an ironic topic because it feels like a defense of sanctity and family when all of a sudden your cheer squad has been infiltrated by a gay man. But this is like again, maybe Sarah would grimace at this. It's like violating the sanctity of a Hooters. This is
Yeah,
at some
yeah,
level. a
Yes.
subtle display of something. And I think without anybody admitting to it, everybody is in this sort of business, this display, this kabuki, the subtle messaging that the athletes get the women. That's part of what's on display. Somebody might disagree with me out there and say I'm overthinking it, that I'm trying to get too Freudian with all of it. But I think that's what this has been. And so when people don't like it and they don't like the sort of rhythm and flow being disrupted, Trace, do you have the Patriots reveal too? Because that one's also, I think that one's almost comedic in a way. Do we have that one? I want to show that one because I want to draw off that one. This is all we're doing today. Okay. Oh, dang it, Trace. You went right to the guy. Okay. No offense to him. He's fabulous. He's fantastic. Let's stop that video. Let's stop that video. What I was hoping for in that instance, folks, and I apologize to all of you deeply, is that it's woman, 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 then that guy. And it almost feels like an SNL sketch. And I almost wish it was Chris Farley. I almost wish it was something more comedic because there is a comedy nobody's admitting to of the mean customer, the base customer being disappointed by this, but not for any sanctified reason, I guess, Nancy, is what I'm
I,
saying.
I think that in terms of like, if I were going to watch girl, 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 and then they threw a guy in there, be like, oh, that's kind of fun, a little variety, right? But in terms of like, well, it's the soft sex and the football player getting the girl. Most people watching these professional sports, like they're never going to get within 100 yards, no pun intended, of being able to play on a playing field. But the idea that these guys are not only these great athletes, but they have proximity to these girls, that just sort of
Mm.
like amps up the temperature a little bit. And really, I think all that the viewer wants to see is a shot of their panties. That's it. Like, leg up in the air, shot. And then it's like, do I want to see a guy's package? Like, not really. Like, that's not why I came. So anyway, they're gonna get it or they're not, or they don't have to watch that part or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, do you see stuff like this as a reflection of one side having made gains in the culture war? I know we can dismiss this as silly, but maybe this is evidence that this would even be a thing, is evidence perhaps that the right made gains and Elon bought Twitter and they got more of the conversation. They got these institutions on the run. The New Yorker is blocking Chris Rufo in fear because of what one of its writers had tweeted in the past. We might talk about that later, we might not. Is that why they're fighting over something piddly right here, or is this just the arbitrary nature of the content environment?
I definitely think we could talk about this till the cows came home. I definitely think the left, to call it that, overstepped in, starting 2015, 2016, certainly 2020 and beyond. And we were just told to shut the fuck up. If we had, opinions that was different from theirs, we'd get canceled. We were just, we were told we were supposed to like comedy that wasn't funny, and maybe we'll get into that. Just
Ooh.
a lot of things that we were told we were not supposed to think and not supposed to say anymore. You're not supposed to. And if you do, guess what? Meet the guillotine. And
Mm.
we have now aged out of that era. And there are people now that are like, no, I'm going to stick it to you. Like, you stuck it to me, now I'm going to stick it to you. And it's all just incredibly childish. But I do think if we want to look at it that way, did the right gain yardage? Yeah, they
Yeah.
have. But also, like, I don't want to play this game. Like,
Yeah.
that's not, I'm not on anybody's team here. And I think the that you're asking me to be by putting this, Vikings cheerleader on is like, well, sorry, you gotta do way better than that.
Well, I will close this topic with a quote from one of my readers. Keep in mind, this is not my language. I apologize for the language used here. I didn't say it. I am reading somebody else. I may be a simple man, but I don't want tits interrupting my football time. Conversely, I don't want football interrupting tits time. So there you go. There you
It's
go.
time. That's what we want.
Speaking of tits time, uh,
Speaking
the topic of sextortion, there was an
of,
incredible article
uh,
in ESPN, ESPN.com, written by the great journalist Dan Wetzel, called "The Predatory Web of Sextortion Increasingly Ensnares Young Athletes." Now, this article just really searing,
It's
horrifying
horrifying.
stuff. We don't even we can scratch the surface of it. I don't want to delve deeply in it, but I'll say one thing, a bit of a positive tease from this. I will set up after you go and give some thoughts on this. I actually have a positive spin on this, Nancy. And it's a positive spin for everybody else out there. It's something from this, a perspective that should hopefully improve all of your lives. That's my tease. What is your take on this phenomenon that appears to target high status high schoolers, high status, maybe college players, where the best I could describe it, there are scammers who pretend to be young women and catfish these guys into sharing photos, private photos, and then that is leveraged into money because these young men have reputations. They're not just, I don't know, losers, and that actually is a double-edged sword for them. So, what is your take?
So if we're going to reel back time a little bit here, I remember writing an article for Reason magazine back in 2009 where a 16-year-old high school player lived in Rochester as a football player. His girlfriend sent him a picture of her boobies, and his friends saw it and they sent it around, and it went around the school, and the parents got involved, and the kid got in trouble, and then was going to have to register as a sex offender. This is like kindergarten, right?
Mm,
Compared to what has happened now. We all know that we know because I have elderly parents. I know that they've been scammed. There's a whole industry of people that scam. And old people are easy to scam because they're old and they're forgetful and they don't understand technology and their spouse is dead and they're lonely. And so they're easy to scam. Well, who else is easy to scam besides lonely people? Young people that
yeah.
don't have, maybe they're technologically savvy, but they don't have wisdom yet. So these poor young athletes, you know, we don't have to go into chapter and verse. The article is a really good piece, a terrifying, horrifying piece. It's a young guy. This gal comes in, they're chatting, they have friends in common. He can see it. It's late at night, a couple of hours. And all of a sudden she's like, maybe we have a little sexy time. And he's like, oh no, ha ha ha. But you know, she
Yeah.
does. And she sends, I don't know, a picture of her breasts or something. And she's like, come on, dude. Come on, dude. Now you got to understand, like, this is a young guy. She knows how to goad him. Like, she knows, how do I provoke this? And I can't say young guys are the hardest people to provoke into getting a boner.
Mm,
So he shows her, and instantly it starts. We're going to ruin your life. We got it. We got all your pictures, we got all your contacts. And he is so beside himself so quickly, and they do it. And as we know, if I may say this without getting, he commits suicide.
yeah.
And this is not, it's obviously doesn't happen all the time, but it happens because people feel so unable to handle what is being given to them.
Mm,
What do I think? I mean, I think this is horrifying. I think that we understand, as we find out in the piece, this is coming from the other side of the world, coming from Nigeria. Nigeria, as I sent you a piece yesterday from the New Yorker in 2006, Nigeria has been doing this for a long time. Nigeria is incredibly technologically forward. I think they were like the first country to have like a lot of cell phone service and to get really, really smart about this stuff. And this is an industry. And I don't know how they find these athletes, but they do. And frankly, they just do not care. They do not care. The person is telling them on the phone, I am going to kill myself. Good, do it, do
yeah.
it, do it. It's like the inhumanity of it speaks to me, and I'm interested in your take on this. I've been talking a long
Yeah.
time. What sort of deadening is occurring in tandem to our use of technology to
Mm,
where I blow my brains out right now in front of you and you're like, oh, whatever. I don't care.
yeah.
I don't
So,
care.
okay, so that would be a very strange stream. It's funny. We couldn't resist getting to the macabre and the morbid side of it. Even if I wanted to skirt past it, it pulls you in.
Yeah.
Because the darkest part of it to me was after the young man's demise, they were still trying to extort the family and leverage the future humiliation. And there's just such a lack of humanity to it that it boggles the mind.
Yeah.
And you wonder, do I just not have a good theory of mind of that kind of person? Or is it just something that has to do with this internet exchange where they don't feel real to me, so it's not real to me. So I'm just going to continue to play the game because this is an abstracted game. Now, I will eventually get to the positive. I will get to a positive spin on this.
Yeah.
One thing I would say is you made that observation that old people get scammed and they're similar to young people because they're both not completely
Yeah.
with it, but in a way, they just have different vulnerabilities. I think the old people get scammed because to them, the internet isn't a real place. And in this instance, I think the young people get scammed and extorted because they think the internet is everything.
Yeah. Very
The
good.
young people this happened to, the idea of their reputation being sullied out there, to them, from their perspective, growing up in the internet, there's no touch grass reality. There's
Yep.
no world
Yep.
outside of it.
Yep.
So somebody's saying, I'm going to ruin your reputation online is everything. And it's not everything. And you wish you could just say to the people this has happened to, because we've gone through our various controversies, Nancy. We've suffered embarrassment to a
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it, but life moves on
Yeah.
and it's going to be okay, even if this feels like everything right now. And that's not even my positive statement. The positive gloss I wanted to put on this, Nancy, is that none of you should feel jealous of anybody. People feel very jealous nowadays. There's Instagram where everyone's living their best life and you feel competitive, you feel jealous, you feel like somebody has it better. People clearly have better circumstances than others, but it can be a double-edged sword and you can be jealous of athletes. Higher status, it's hard to get higher status than the high school jock, a good-looking high school jock, or an athlete making millions of dollars. But even that has its pratfalls. One of the reasons why they get ensnared in these scams is that, hey, somebody like myself, if some anonymous, beautiful woman online starts communicating with me, Nancy, I go, Nigerian scammer. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you are somebody of status, that has a downside. The downside is that it's more likely that you can be targeted with something like this, more likely you can be tricked. And for the highest paid athletes, the NBA players I've known, they see a darkness to humanity that a lot of us are spared from seeing. They see friends, family betray them, try to get
Yeah.
at their money, all this stuff that we don't see. So I'm just saying to people out there, don't be jealous. There's a dark side to status. Be happy with what you got.
If I could give a bit of advice, one thing that they talked about later on about how even if you can bring these two particular brothers to justice, the brothers that, ensnared this guy, and they did bring them to justice in the United States, and they're currently serving 17 and a half years. The guys are like, we're like two of thousands of people doing this that we know of. And
Mhm.
like, you can't possibly eradicate people that doing this, but you know what you can do? And this, if I could give all people an advice, if they somehow, for some reason, in a stupid moment, send a picture of their titties or their dong someplace, and then these people come up and say to you, I'm going to put it online, just say, go ahead.
Yeah.
Just go ahead. Half the world has boobs, the other half have dongs. Please be my guest. Like, it doesn't matter. Your friends are going to laugh. Your mother's going to be horrified. And then everyone's going to go on their lives and you'll be at a cocktail party 2 months later. And someone's going to go like, everybody saw Nancy's titties. Like, okay, so what? So what?
No,
Do not fall for it.
I don't know if I agree. I'm with Teutonia World, the Shaggy defense, which is it wasn't me because how are you gonna even know nowadays? That's
Oh,
AI. That's not
oh,
me.
that's true.
You're
That's
gonna believe
absolutely true.
that? I
I mean,
will. I mean, how do you feel about the morality of this? I had this conversation with a friend of mine. He was in journalism, and he was worried that he would be canceled. This was years ago, where things were crazy. Things are less crazy now, but he was worried about an off-color joke he made at a party. He had some young, rebellious type of guy who worked for him who seemed like maybe not the greatest guy. Is that guy going to come out and say that I said this thing? And I believe And it's ironic because I believe in honesty. I try to be as honest as I can be, Nancy. That's part of how I do what I do. But I believe if somebody leverages that sort of thing, that sort of private thing to try to destroy you, absent context,
Oh,
you are morally permitted to just lie and say it wasn't you and it never
wasn't
happened.
me. Ooh, interesting. I haven't tried that.
Well, do you believe
Wasn't me.
that? Would you do that?
I don't know. I'll tell you why. One thing that's always bugged me since I was a little kid is people that tell me I said something when I didn't, or I
Mm.
did something when I know I didn't do it. That always has really bugged me. So then, like skirting around when I did do it, I don't know, man. I might not be able to sleep so well.
I think
I
it's
don't
very
know.
Gen X of you because this person was
I know.
Gen X
Yeah.
and they said they could not do it. Honesty, too valued, too important,
Yeah.
couldn't imagine it. Whereas I, a wormy millennial, I just went, hey, I'm getting out of this. I can't live according to you digging through my trash and showing it to
Yeah.
everybody. You did something unethical. I don't then need to uphold my ethical standards in accordance and join you into the destruction of myself. I think I mean, it's a good question for an ethicist. When Aziz Ansari had that woman who talked about his date in Babe.net or whatever that
Yeah.
publication was, would he have been ethically justified in saying, "Hey, none of this ever happened. I don't even know." It's a question.
Well, I don't know, because she might have been able to produce something. Yeah, that was I wrote about that case a long time ago. That was did not make me popular. Let's just leave it at that.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
we remember those days. Anyway,
Well, we've got some articles being shared. I think we've got one from the great Aaron Reyes on the composition of NFL fandom. If he's calling in to talk about that, I'm happy to talk about that. Okay, he's got his hand up. Okay,
hey,
we'll
Aaron.
get a little info here of whether we're right about this topic or whatever Aaron wants to talk about. Bring him up to the stage.
Hi, Aaron.
Uh-oh, we're not hearing him in his Steelers uniform.
Yeah.
He's ready to go. My God.
What is he, a cop?
This is he's impersonating a Steeler. I wonder what uniform it is. Can't see that. Hope it's the most random one.
Hello?
Ah,
Yeah, now you are. You're there.
You there? All right.
there
Sorry.
we go. We've got you. We've got you.
It's my earbuds at the end of the workday. They're all screwed up and charged at different levels. Sorry.
Makes
Uh,
sense. Makes sense. Okay.
you have to do things like work. But anyway, so I'm as a Steeler fan, we don't have cheerleaders. We're one of the, I think, five teams that don't. So that was just my
Too
little
blue collar. Too blue collar for that.
blue collar. And also the Roonies are what you might say, very sort of reserved. That might be
Ah, okay.
put it all.
Small C conservative. I got you.
Something like that, I think. So there is a dynamic that's changed, especially in the NFL, as it's really become, our sort of culture sport, right? It's almost bigger than sport. And that, over 40% of the viewership is female, it's women, and it's across every age cohort. Yeah. And so I actually put in a link on it's a
Is
standard.
it wrong that I just don't believe it? Or
I
I
don't
just go
either.
fake
Well,
news,
then
fake
you can bet,
survey.
and you can bet against Standard and Poor's and their rating of $400 trillion of
Oh, this is intimidating.
yeah, I would just say
I
that objectively, they're not really in the business. You could argue about their bond ratings in 2007, 8, 9 with the other bond raters of the whole planet, but in terms of like day-to-day business data, they're not. I doubt they're goosing these numbers relative to the business model they have. But
Yeah, I'm doing the big short on this. I'm going, this is my quant. He's a degenerate gambler.
yeah, knock yourself out. But so I do think there is a shift or a battle, you might call it, between generations of especially something as big as sort of NFL fandom. And you see it in Europe with soccer, with football, their football, which is really the same thing in terms of the
yeah,
meaning.
yeah,
It's the blue collar sport. Here it's not because we have the pay to play and
Yeah.
elite sort of suburban white people with fantasy dreams of beating poor kids in Barcelona at soccer.
Yeah.
which is about the
It's
same.
for Nancy's
Opportunity.
Northwesterners, the Portland people that you were
Yes,
saying.
exactly, exactly. And as a father of two daughters who played soccer through college the same way, literally, but and had no chance of competing at that highest level that Europe produces. But that the U.S. and Europe, you have that same vibe shift because as these sports start consuming a larger part of the population, that other part of the culture, the less, let's say, blue
Mm.
collar, working class, in Europe they call them ultras. We sort of got rid of our ultras because we have policing at our stadiums, and we'll just arrest you and really overcharge you if you commit a crime at a stadium. But I do think there's this interesting sort of fight that goes on between the sort of blue collar historical fans of a major cultural sport, and then let's say the new fandom. And you see it with college sports now, right? Because as the players are making more money, or they're making money, and the players are moving around, and there's more players and more sports doing it, you have a lot of new fans coming in to these sports, and they kind of slam into the old fans, and the
Mm.
and that conflict is fascinating because you get it's almost a culture war within the sport itself.
Are you
Uh,
saying that Blaze is slamming into the new fans? Those are your words. Is that
and
what you were saying?
those are your words.
Okay.
And but I mean, ultimately, number one, who cares? I do think we have a manufacturing of outrage because we have such performative vandalism now as modern society because our
Ooh.
narcissism toolkit is so exhausted. So now we're just creating new vandalism because it's almost like that's our startup innovation, is that just vandalize everything you can and see what works.
Yeah.
And so that's which I really do believe in that thesis, because
I
you just,
like
go ahead. Sorry.
I like what is it? Performative vandalism out of the
Yeah,
narcissism toolkit. I don't know which writer.
that's
I don't
really
know that
good.
That's me, baby.
Very
I just
nice.
like which author would have a book. Is that a David Foster
That's
Wallace?
David
Oh
Foster.
yeah. Oh, good one. So I'm a Foster Wallace person, and
Uh,
and a what do you call it, a Bukowski guy. So I like both of those. So those are.
Ooh, you might get me talking all the hubbub right now on the internet about whether drinking is good or bad, talking about Bukowski. Um, okay, I think
Actually,
that
one last quick point on drinking that I think is really fascinating.
okay.
So my daughters are older, 27 and 30, and that generation I've seen has just radically, I would just call it de-drinks. Like it's like
Mm.
Yeah.
their definition, and it's not like they're not doing it, they're not moralizing. It's not like it's a crusade. They just don't do it. It's a big, I mean, I see a huge difference. And when I go to games, you just see it. You see it apparently at the game. You'll see a parent, with an older kid like mine and trying to buy a beer, or not trying to buy a beer, like, hey, do you want a beer? And they're like, no, not
No.
really. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Well, we've
Yeah.
got, the younger people that we got this. This is our
That's
alcohol.
that's your alcohol, actually.
Yeah.
This is our drug. I
Yeah.
think that's
Actually,
what
actually, there's a great article in the Wall Street Journal I'd recommend everyone read. Um, it's by Joseph Epstein, no relation, obviously. I remember the name because of it, obviously, sadly. But he wrote an article that says phones, the way we think of them now, are the new cigarettes.
yeah.
And
Oh,
it was very fascinating. So I recommend you read the article. I think you both might like it. So
Well, it sounds like a
I'll
great
dig it
tip.
up and put it in the chat.
That sounds like a great tip. Smart thoughts as always, Aaron. You take care. I guess go Steelers. I don't have an objection to the
That's
Steelers.
okay.
Fine,
It's Steeler Nation. That's how we roll. So
Yeah, that's cool by me. I think that's all fine. I don't know if we're gonna detour necessarily into the drop in drinking and whether that is a bad thing or whether it's a good thing that's downstream from a bad thing necessarily. Um, Dealer's choice, Nancy. Dealer's choice.
I still drink.
I
Just
mean, it's okay in
in case anybody
moderation.
needs to know that. Apparently,
Yeah.
this generation is like, we're the only ones drinking and having parties still. I'm like, great, everybody come over. We'll feed you.
I think it's definitely there's a pro-social element to it. I don't really drink, but I don't really not drink, if you know what I mean, which puts you in a scenario where you get bullied into drinking. I'm not a former alcoholic. I don't have an objection to drinking. So if I say, hey, no thanks, people just, all they do is beat on you until you drink at that point because there's no objection. You don't have a religious objection. You don't have a problem. So it's, what are you doing? You're making things lame. So those are the times I drink. I don't know. I don't get the same effect from it as other people. It's just,
I never ever drink by myself, but I love when we're home and it's evening at 7 o'clock. We have a cocktail. I have 2 drinks.
Mhm.
I'm happy. Love going to a bar and meeting my friends, couple of drinks. Love it. Love it. Never giving it up. It's really a pleasure.
Well, we're about to find out if Craig drinks. We're going to bring
Okay.
him to the floor before we
Hey,
shift
Craig.
topics, either to Mark Maron
Oh,
or to the basketball player Michael Porter Jr. showing dates Andrew Tate clips, which is going to be a good one. Craig, can we hear you? Can we
Can
hear
you
you
hear
out
me?
there?
yep.
Yeah,
You can
with the
hear me?
Jackson Pollock looking thing behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We,
that my students made this for me. They made it in art
ah,
history class. Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
3 years ago. I to answer your question, I don't drink. I'm 27 years old and I never
There you
drank.
go.
In college, I didn't want to drink just to avoid alcoholism, all the health effects. So I'm one of the Zoomers that aren't that aren't drinking. I had a question for Nancy about your one of the interviews on your podcast that I was very interested in was Brooke Seam.
Uh-huh.
I felt like it was very interesting to hear, but I felt like she was probably negative too aggressively on SSRIs. And I was wondering if you felt that way too. And to what degree did you disagree with her point of view on the use of SSRIs? Because I'm someone that I think I've benefited from that in the past.
Mm.
And I felt like it was very anecdotal and
So
she was
we
kind of pausing to everyone.
So we should just preface this by saying she went on SSRIs when she was very young after her father died suddenly, and she was an unhappy teenager, and she stayed on it for like 20 something years. And everyone's like, well, you can't ever go off, but we could change it. We could do this. And then she decided, I can't live like this anymore. And she did go off and her life has gotten a lot better. Okay. Now, for someone that is like this, she is evangelical about this because she was told so adamantly that it was not possible for her to do this. Not unlike Katie Herzog, who has a new book out talking about how, well, listen, the only way to stop drinking is, full steam, Alcoholics Anonymous. And she's like, actually, I think there might be, it's like not door number 1, not door number 2. There is door number 3, and it's okay to try that. I think that's where Brooke is at, but she may be a little strident because she saw how detrimental SSRIs were her. For you, it seems to be, you seem happy. I don't know you, but you were like, no, this has been good for me. I think for a lot of people, I guess, I don't know a lot about it. I've never been on them myself. It is really life compromising. And to be told you're not allowed to go off or people aren't even interested in giving you options, I can see why she's evangelical about it.
Yeah, people
That
in my
makes sense.
family are on it. So this is a topic that I would love to know the answers to it. I didn't know we'd talk about it at all, but I don't have much in the way of insight myself. You're in the realm of science and brain chemistry. And yeah, I think that's something where it's got to be like a lot of things, where it's got to be useful. It's a tool. It's got to be useful for some people. This seems like a ridiculous analogy, but I wrote about how I benefited from waking up at 4:30 a.m. And some people said, yes, this is the way. But other people said, hey, you're not taking into account that everybody's different. And this actually isn't going to be good for a lot of people, even if it was a good change for yourself. I think we all have that temptation when we make a change, especially if it's a change contrary to the conventional wisdom of what we should be doing and it works out, we become evangelists and we want to save and rescue everybody from being misled the way we were misled. But there's that tricky problem where it's not one size fits all. And again, with no scientific knowledge, that would be my assumption here. I think we've sufficiently answered Craig's question. So get him the hell out of here. Thanks, Craig. Okay. So dealer's choice, Nancy. Do you want to talk about basketball player Michael Porter Jr. showing Andrew Tate clips to dates, or do we want to talk about how much you hated the Mark Maron special?
Well, I will just tell you, very quickly, obviously I know who Mark Maron is, but when he was all super popular with WTF, I was writing a book about child murder and just didn't dip into his stuff. But then he did interview Laura Albert, who was this writer who had posed as JT Leroy, who was like this, you know, transgendered teenage drug addicted hooker and got all this like celebrity. And then it turned out there was no GT and she was behind it. And I wrote a big article about her that did very well. And he had her on his show. And I listened to it because I'd written this big Laura Albert article. And he was so credulous that I was like, dude, like, really, you got to do a little better here. But okay, his show, not my show. But I had no particular interest in watching the Mark Maron special. But because I love you, Ethan Strauss, and you said, hey, maybe we're going to talk about it just about 2 hours ago, I'm like, you know what? Let me turn it on. Dude, I got 30 minutes in. I did not laugh one time. If you don't laugh during 30 minutes.
Oh, I'm so glad we didn't watch this together because I did say it was funny.
I did not find it funny at all. I thought, okay, since he's obviously very, very anti-Trump, which I am pretty anti-Trump too, believe me. I was like, let's say this had come out in 2017. Let's just say hypothetically. You wouldn't have been able to do, there was the one kind of funny Elon Musk joke that he did had created an iron lung, which could hook up to the back of your car. That was kind of funny. But would we have laughed? Because would it have seemed fresher? Like, oh my God, look at the way he's telling these Trump jokes in ways I've never heard. It struck me as so stale. And like people were laughing. I was like, what's funny? I didn't get it at all.
So, okay, so this is a thing, this might be more of a modern thing of how the sequence in which we absorb something, I think fundamentally changes what it is to us. When I did my podcast with your co-host, Sarah Heppola, we were talking about the Sydney Sweeney jeans ad and asking each other the question, how would you have regarded this ad had you never heard the controversy in the first place and you were just coming in cold? And we could not answer that question for ourselves because we couldn't know. We just couldn't know what it would seem like to us because this is how we found out about the commercial.
Let me answer that question before you go on.
Okay.
I would have thought it was sexy and derivative of Brooke Shields back in the 70s. Simple. Very simple.
You probably would have been correct, but I can't jump into my own mind and know the answer to that question. Now, I watched the Mark Maron special backwards. I skipped ahead because I wanted to see a segment from the trailer. I watched nearly the entirety of the special without any of that political stuff entering my mind. And the political stuff in the special, the Trump stuff, that's the first 5 minutes. That's the opening. That's the opening thing. And so that sort of maybe sets the mood. And I think he regards himself as a political guy. He regards himself as, these are my fans. This is what they want to know most. If you're my people, you're this kind of person. And I think it's the worst material in the special. But I had a completely, I don't want to say unblemished, because maybe from his perspective to that kind of fan, that's what resonates. But unsullied from my perspective was the special. And that's something that was interesting. But what I didn't like about it, what I did write about it, with some pushback from people who would want me to shut up now that Trump is in power, about having been canceled and oppressed, Nancy. We were so oppressed in the day back in the day. I didn't like when he was saying the people who supported Trump, they were saying their free speech was infringed upon, which it never was. And what I found interesting wasn't the jokes that he was making or the commentary, which I found derivative as you did when it went to the political space. It's when he reached out and he pointed at his audience and got nothing after he said that. It was a prompt for a laugh or for clapper. It was nothing. And my read on that was that the audience at some level knows. The audience at some level knows that even if we're in a different era right now, with its own flaws, with Trump in power, with you could argue it's a worse era, and I think from their perspective it is. But the era before that was one where you really did have to watch what you say in any public-facing profession and know it's not any kind of joke and know it's not just pushback. It's the ruin your life type thing. So that's what I found interesting.
I think you're right. I think we talked about that a little earlier. We did live through an era where, I mean, we saw, I think it was in 2020, it was around June 2020, we saw the defenestration of like 5 editor-in-chiefs in 1 week.
Yeah.
Because somebody wore a wrong costume, and somebody said buildings matter too, and somebody went to defend somebody that something said at the New York Times, but they didn't defend it exactly the right way. It was like, wait, what? So basically, everyone was like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm scared. I'm going to do it. One thing that I didn't like about, and again, I only saw the first half hour, so he may have not gone there, but I did see him do something that I really, really dislike in all politicians or all Americans when they do it, which is pointing your finger at 150 million of your fellow Americans.
Mm.
And they're like, oh, 150 million people thought like, that's our guy. He said something like that about Trump.
Yeah.
And I thought, it was actually some of you people here listen to the Fifth Column, and Matt said this the other day, but I'm going to repeat it because he and I were the people that said it. We're in the car and we're listening to some of this garbage about hating your fellow Americans. And I was like, here's the solution. Every American needs to get in their car and drive 1,500 miles and talk to 5 Americans a day at the diner, at the hotel, at the Target, wherever, doesn't matter. And then you come back and you tell me that you hate your fellow Americans because you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And the idea that we started with the basket of deplorables and all this stuff, the idea that half of our countrymen are to blame is not true. And I think Matt said it, the solution to America's problems are Americans. And I think we have to talk, sorry, I'm going to get rid of my soapbox in a second. That is something I think I saw Maron doing a little bit of, I could be wrong, but a little bit pointing at the bad people over there. And I don't like that. And I don't agree with that.
Ask not what you can do for your Americans. Ask what it's something like
Something
that.
like that.
Well, I think that there's this weird theory of mind thing that happens where people will assume that everybody on the other side loves everything about the option when it's one of two options. And if you were to ask people in Blue World, do you think Joe Biden or Kamala Harris are amazing and the ideal candidate? In private, they would have said, hell no, of course not, for this and that and the other reason. And yet there's this common assumption that the person on the other side feels that way completely, and everybody's lockstep completely for the enemy. Now, some are. I'm always amused when Kid Rock says, I don't like Donald Trump, and then it's ... I love Donald Trump. I mean, that does exist as well. But even that's somebody who looks like a good hang. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
It
For
seems
sure.
fun. Kid Rock, I suppose. Anyway, Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate. I haven't talked about him in 2 weeks.
Michael Porter Jr. He went on the Nelk Boys podcast, which Benjamin Netanyahu has also appeared on, which is everything in life right now, Nancy, feels like a mad lib. It feels like reality is a mad lib where it's just anything I pull out of the hat. That the Nelk Boys, they went from interviewing Bibi Netanyahu to Brooklyn Nets sharpshooter Michael Porter Jr. But this clip has been bandied about, and I want you to know what you think about this dating strategy.
Okay.
I do, and then the other thing I do is like I need to see a little bit about their like beliefs. So I'll like I'm not saying I'm a misogynist or anything, but I'll throw on some Andrew Tate and see how they react.
Yeah,
or I'll
like Andrew Tate from like 5 years ago.
Or I'll bring up like conversations and play like devil's advocate just to see how this girl like thinks about certain things. Because if they're too, I do like to test
you do it because you got to protect your time and energy.
Well,
that's
let
why.
me say
Because
this, like,
that's why I don't think it's a bad strategy where you have people slide in and see.
And then how do they pass that test then? Because you obviously like.
It's interesting. It's an interesting test, Nancy. Yes. Your thoughts? I
mean, there's a lot of ways you could. First of all, I find testing your date to be like pretty freaking lame. Like, why don't you have a conversation? Why don't you like go out and have a drink or eat a hamburger and get to know each other? But okay, you want to do a test? You can do anything, right? You can read a chapter from the Bible. You can look at like, hello, do you like Manet or Monet? Like, you can do anything. He chooses to do Andrew Tate because he thinks it's provocative. Let's see what she's going to do now. It's bratty. I don't think it's very impressive. But, he's of a generation where they're like, this would be funny. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. There's definitely a how to lose a guy in 10 days flavor to this, but reversed of I'm going to do something perhaps obscene or revealing of misogyny. And if she really likes me, she's not going to flee. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. And women do this. It's called shit testing, right? Having tests of men
Which I
that,
hate. Which I
yeah,
hate.
I don't think it's a good idea.
I hate. I
But
had an editor who said to me, if someone asks you a question you don't want to answer, just look at them and say, why do you ask? So he could show me, let's say I'm going on a date with him, which of course I wouldn't be, but okay, with him. And he can shows me this and he's saying, what do you think? And I could say to him, why do you ask? Ball in
Yeah.
his court. Ball in his court. Let him explain himself to me.
I mean, that could be the failure of the test from his perspective. Now, I should give some context. He is an odd duck, this Michael
Okay.
Porter Jr. He, beautiful jump shot, just glorious, unblockable jump shot, incredible jump shot. Not known to be the savviest player, smartest player. Some strangeness. He discussed some issues in the episode that perhaps he shouldn't be discussing. His brother got knocked for insider gambling on games that his brother was playing in, for instance, and he was discussing this sort of matter freely. But he's in a zone that I'm going to call the Iguodala zone. The Iguodala zone. I'll explain what I mean there. Andre Iguodala, who should be on his way to the Hall of Fame, he was an integral part of the Golden State Warriors dynasty run. He was my favorite quote in the locker room. I love Andre. He's a caustic, acerbic kind of guy, and he's not a superstar, but he's valuable, or was when he was playing. He's necessary, but he's not the face of any corporation. He doesn't really have anybody to answer to. So every now and again, Andre in the locker room would say something wildly provocative. And I would see this storm, this controversy, and all this tut-tutting, all this finger wagging, all this, man, he's got to be smarter than that. He's got to know better than that. He can't do that. And I would go, why? Why? What power do we have over this man? There's no corporation that can make him recant. There's nobody that can get him through some sort of lever or pressure to get him to say that he messed up. And that's an interesting space certain NBA players are in. If you're not the superstar, if you're not the face of the operation, if you're not the guy on the marquee at Nike, but you're making hundreds of millions of dollars, there's nothing we can really do to stop Michael Porter Jr. from talking about Andrew Tate or almost anything else crazy out there.
No. I mean, it's a moment of entertainment, obviously, for somebody. I think there's someone named Ryan with his hand up.
Okay. Okay, Ryan. Let's have you get in here, Ryan.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank you for including me in the conversation. I got to do another shout out to you, Ethan. Last time it was Guy Haberman. This time Tom Tolbert.
Oh yeah.
If you can bring Tom on, I think that would be a great two-way conversation to have. Because that podcast you guys did together was awesome.
I think he might be more open to talking about whatever than the past. Because when I sat down with him, I thought it was going to be really sports. I sit down with him at his beautiful place. I think he's open about it being in Alameda. I don't think I'm doxing him. And he's just going, I don't know. I kind of feel like we should be spanking our kids. We're going there. We're talking about it. We're talking about other stuff. Fine. That's cool. I think that's a very good idea, man. It's I like that you listen to it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have any commentary about the Mark Maron special. I haven't seen that.
He would feel that. You would lash him deeply by mispronouncing his last name. I think he would hold on to that. But you were continue.
My apologies. I didn't mean to offend anybody. But Nancy, I'm not familiar with your work.
Okay.
With respect to I guess that was really the only commentary I really had, but I appreciate that you brought me on here.
Let me step in a bit because I think it's sometimes weird for somebody to have to explain their own resume and tout themselves. It's difficult. It's difficult to do that, at least for myself. Nancy might be thinking, shut up, I can do it. Great, but I'm talking, so I'm going to talk.
Go ahead, Ethan.
Nancy is a fearless journalist who really cares about the truth. did some of the best reporting during the 2020 madness that wasn't baiting in any particular way or trying to curry favor with any particular side. It was actually getting in the streets of Portland and showing this is what's actually going on. Even if people mess with me, even if deranged people are trying to dox me. And in addition to being a great journalist who has written multiple books exploring human darkness and psychology, I think is the strain through a lot of what you write. There might be something else that she's getting for us and bringing back.
This is perfect.
Yeah, right there.
There we
To
go.
Oh,
bridge.
all right. I'll look it up.
That's
Thank you,
okay.
Nancy.
Yeah. In addition to that, she does a great podcast with her co-host, Sarah Hepola. They both have appeared on my podcast. They offer, I would say, a reasonable and honest, quite Gen X perspective that I thoroughly enjoy. So I might have done you a disservice, Nancy. There are more things
great.
that you
Thank
have a
you.
lot of irons in the fire, but that's how I would describe you.
Thank you. And thank you for asking.
No, great job, Ethan. And pleasure to meet you, Nancy.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Ryan. I might have still wanted to talk about Andrew Tate just a bit.
Do it.
I might have. Because I guess the point I would make about Andrew Tate is this. He seems like a thoroughly horrible person. And I wouldn't even say think. I'm just going to say that's what he is based on what has happened. But I think what's hard for people to understand sometimes is that a horrible person can be funny. I saw him on a podcast. It was with Tom Segura. I can't pronounce Tom Segura's wife's last name. I apologize. But Andrew Tate was with them. And I saw clips of it. And he had these professional comedians belly laughing, bowled over, in part because there's just a shock value to some of the things he says. And I think sometimes when people are disliked, there's this want to take everything from them, rob them of all status. You
absolutely.
do that with comedians.
That's
If
right.
I was mad at what Mark Maron said, even if I did find him funny, I'd go, he's not funny. He's not funny. Andrew Tate's very funny. So when people are discussing, oh my God, why is this guy resonating with young men everywhere? And they immediately leap to the deepest and darkest aspects of it. I think there's an unwillingness to just admit, well, he's really funny. And that's part of what's happening here.
You're absolutely right in terms of what, I mean, we've had people that have been so heavily canceled that have lost, like, they've had their specials taken away. They've lost, like Louis C.K. They lose certain deals, and then they're like persona non grata, and they get awards taken away and television shows and everything. And they're constantly like, they just show up to buy a newspaper and they have like rapist being screamed at them. And you're like, what do you want me to do? What else do you want to take from me? When I had my own mini cancellation, I was like, you could take me to Pioneer Square in Portland, where I was living at the time, and set me on fire. And it wouldn't have been enough for the people that were angry. They develop a taste for, like, let's say Andrew Tate. I don't really know a lot about the guy. I've seen some clips where I'm like, looks like a total fucking douchebag, but okay. But okay, if he's funny, he's also funny. And people are then maybe willing to overlook some of the like yuckier stuff because he makes them laugh. Okay, I'm willing to go there. And like, you don't have to completely like pulverize people, but we have, unfortunately, I think, or some people have developed an appetite for that.
Well, there's no trust. It's the PRification of everything, I've called it, where there's not on the one hand, on the other hand, I need to give you the full talking points on every reason you shouldn't like this person. And there's not an admission, there's not a concession to reality. There's not, hey, Donald Trump's kind of funny. There's not that when people are in that, when they're in that mode. There's not that trust. I see Teutonio World is talking about how the rise of Tate might be in response. He says it's possible that the tragic decline of hip hop means that Tate filled the void for young men to want to hear Iceberg Slim pimp tales. Huh.
Slim.
Is hip hop in decline? We're the people.
Yeah, I was like, where have I been? I missed it.
I mean, I don't know how to rank such a thing. I'm not sure. I know rock music's in decline. Weirdly, it seems like country music is on the incline. It seems like it's higher status now, that people of my snobby cohort 10 years ago thought of country as something to turn your nose up at. Now there's a want to show how open-minded you are, that you, I don't know, listen to these things. That seems to be in.
I think country music is also, I mean, I listen to country music sometimes on the radio. It's kind of straight ahead. It's like, honey, I think you're so hot and I love you. Still love you. Man, sitting on the porch with my kids. Like, mama, you're the best. Like, it's pretty straight ahead, and I think sometimes we need that. It's just kind of comforting.
Well, people could say this about hip hop, but what I like about a lot of country pop that I hear is it seems almost like a caricature of itself, where
yes, for sure. For sure.
It's
like
really trying to lay it on thick.
Definitely. But that's maybe okay sometimes. Every song is like, honey, I met you 30 years ago and you're still hot and I still love you. It's like, okay, I'll take it.
That's pretty appealing. Iceberg Slim reminds me of a quote that we will end on. Andre Iguodala, the aforementioned Andre Iguodala, with some motivational speak, unlike, or I should say not unlike, but quite like the grind set sort of motivation that Andrew Tate occasionally gives. I remember the Golden State Warriors, they were having drama, Nancy. They were having arguments, feuds. Kevin Durant, unhappy. Andre's in the locker room. He's being asked about it. And I'm hearing him. I'm hearing him because I'm standing next to his wife in the hallway and she is calling him and she's accidentally answered, or he's accidentally answered the phone while on television. It's okay. He's not going to say anything he regrets. He's incapable of that, as we've already established.
Yeah.
And he said that an old pimp once said that, look, you can't climb a mountain, Nancy. You can't climb a mountain if it's smooth. So I leave you all with that. Leave you all with that, ladies and gentlemen. Great commentary from Nancy. Great questions. Great commentary from all of you. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful week. See you, everybody. Thanks so much.